Today, I'm transforming Minecraft mobs into dinosaurs. And the first mob I'm starting with is the chicken. I'm turning it into a Dilophosaurus. First things first, I delete all parts of the chicken. We're building this guy completely from scratch. Let's start with the legs. I place a slightly tilted cube. This will be the lower leg. On top of that, I add another, slightly bigger one, and then another to form the thigh. I repeat the exact same process on the other side to make sure both hind legs are symmetrical. Then, I finish them off with some sharp claws. Next up, the body. I place a large rectangular cube right in the center. This is the base of the torso. For the tail, I connect a series of small cubes that gradually shrink toward the end to give it that realistic taper. Now let's move on to the neck. It needs to be long and slightly curved. I use an elongated cube, then a shorter one on top to form the head. For the jaw, I add 2 top and 2 bottom cubes, leaving the mouth slightly open so you can see the sharp teeth. On each side of the head, I attach big round fins. They're bright blue. And on top, I build a red crest using vibrant red blocks to make it pop. Now, the arms. I use thin cubes for the base and add tiny claws at the end. Then I mirror the whole thing to the other side. Time for animation. I give it 2 basic animations. One for when the Dilophosaurus is idle, and another for walking, with a bit of a bouncy sway to make it feel alive. Alright, our Dilophosaurus is done. Letting it roam the forest isn't an option. With those sharp teeth and flashy crest, it would terrify every other creature around. We need a proper enclosure that matches its natural habitat. First, I dig out a large, shallow pit and fill it with water. Now it looks like a swampy pond. To give it something to hunt, I throw in a few fish. The walls of the enclosure aren't flat. I add dripstone in places to create the feel of a rocky cave or canyon. Between the blocks, I mix in moss, mud, silt, and even a bit of clay to make everything look wet and prehistoric. Then, I go in with the details. Around the water, I place thick vegetation, leaves, ferns, tall grass, and small trees. And for the final touch, I add a big glass wall on one side so you can observe the Dilophosaurus without disturbing it. Now I release the Dilophosaurus into its brand new home. It immediately feels way more comfortable here. This enclosure turned out super immersive and detailed. The model fits perfectly into the environment, and everything feels so natural. I'm giving this one a solid 9 out of 10. The next mob is the cow. I'm turning it into a Corythosaurus. First, I remove all parts of the cow. We're building this model completely from scratch. I start with the legs. I place a rectangular cube, then add a second one, slightly smaller, and a third one for the upper part of the leg. I repeat the same process on the other side to make sure both legs are symmetrical. At the bottom, I add a few blocks. These will be the claws. Next, I begin working on the body. I create a large rectangular block that will serve as the core of the torso. Then I move on to the front limbs. They're going to be a bit shorter than the back legs, but still strong and powerful. After that, it's time for the tail. I create several stretched out elements and shape them one by one. I also add a cube tilted downward to make the tail look more natural and dynamic. Now it's time to work on the neck. I create a shape that's smaller than the torso, and then extend it with a long, slightly curved neck, moving on to the head. I start with a rectangular block. This will be the base. Underneath, I place a cube to form the lower jaw. On top, another cube forms the upper jaw. Inside, I add sharp teeth to give it a bit of a bite. After that, I build the crest. It's bright yellow and shaped like a stepped ridge, like someone stacked a staircase on its head. Now, for the animations. I've made one where the Corythosaurus stands still and leans slightly, and another where it walks forward. The Corythosaurus is already in the game, and it's huge, so leaving it in the forest is definitely not an option. It needs a proper enclosure. Since Corythosauruses live near water, I start by adding sand, and of course, a water area. Then I plant ferns, tall grass, bushes, and small trees to provide some shade. To make the enclosure feel more natural and not flat, I place stumps, vines, and even a few large stone boulders, as if they've been lying there since prehistoric times. One side of the enclosure is left open with a glass wall, so you can watch the Corythosaurus without stepping inside. The other sides are reinforced with brown fences and leafy blocks, making everything feel lush and overgrown. After all that's done, I place the Corythosaurus into its new home. And honestly, it looks like it's right where it belongs. The enclosure turned out truly atmospheric. I'm really happy with the result.